Now, a few months ago, we covered the story of Sean Gathright, a young man who seemingly had everything going for him. He was young, came from a supportive family, and according to the people around him, had opportunities to build a completely different life. Instead, he turned to the streets and participated in the calculated murder of Jacksonville rapper Julio Foolio. Sean was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At only 20 years old, he's now in the custody of the Florida prison system, where he is expected to spend the remainder of his natural life. But the other day, a disturbing rumor began circulating online. Several accounts claimed that Sean Gathright had been stabbed behind bars, with one blogger even claiming that he was in critical condition. Now, full disclaimer, this remains an unconfirmed rumor. I looked into the claim and tried to determine whether there was any validity to it, but I could not actually find a report from law enforcement, the prison system, his attorney, his family, or any established news organizations confirming that an attack occurred. I even contacted the Florida Department of Corrections directly and asked whether Gathright had recently been involved in a stabbing or any other serious assault while in custody. As of recording this video, I have not received a response. So where did this rumor actually come from? From what I could trace, it appears to have started with a few posts made by people who were associated with Julio Foolio. One of them posted a photograph of Sean alongside a knife emoji and blood emojis, seemingly hinting that some form of retaliation had taken place. That same person later posted another message saying, "Get up, ghost, don't die," again accompanied by imagery that appeared to reference a stabbing in relation to Sean Gathright. After that claim, it began spreading across different pages. Another blogger posted that he was hearing Sean Gathright was in critical condition after being stabbed in prison. Other accounts repeated similar versions of the story, but none of them explained who their source was, where the alleged attack occurred, or how they knew anything about Sean's medical condition. So once again, this is not something I can independently confirm. Now, there's also another part of the rumor that doesn't really entirely make sense. Some versions claim that Sean was stabbed alongside Rashad Murphy, another man convicted in connection with Foolio's murder. He was a part of the group that basically hunted Foolio down and killed him. However, available inmate information appears to show that Sean and Rashad are being held at different facilities. If that information is correct and accurate, they obviously could not have been attacked together inside the same prison. So that's a major inconsistency, and it is another reason why I'm not presenting any of this as fact. Now, if we strip away the rumor completely, there's still a much larger conversation to have about Sean Gathright and the reality of the life he chose. I'm sure most of you guys remember his background. From everything that was reported about him, Sean was once viewed as a sweet, promising child. He came from a good family, traveled to different places, participated in sports, had adults around him attempting to guide him, pour knowledge into him, and place him in environments where he could become something. He was not someone who appeared to have been born into a situation where prison was his only possible destination. There were other doors open for him. There were people trying to show him those doors. But somewhere along the way, Sean became involved with the wrong crowd, and instead of separating himself from that environment, he appeared to shape his entire identity around it. And what makes his story especially frustrating is that Sean appeared to be a super duper follower. He didn't appear to have the confidence, independence, or ability to stop and generally think for himself. He wanted acceptance, he wanted approval, he wanted to belong to something, and in chasing that belonging, he allowed himself to be pulled into a murder plot involving a man he reportedly had no meaningful personal history with, mind you. I don't even like saying that Sean simply got caught up, because that language can make it sound like he accidentally wandered into something that had nothing to do with him. Obviously, you don't accidentally participate in a targeted hit against somebody you didn't really even know to begin with. So of course, it wasn't a one impulsive decision made in a few seconds. It was a planned and calculated attack. There was a lot of preparation, there was travel, a bunch of surveillance, there were multiple opportunities to back out, and so he basically made a series of decisions that brought him to that hotel parking lot holding that AK style rifle. And then at the same time, when you examine his life, you see a young man who appeared desperate to prove himself to people who were never going to be able to save him from the consequences to begin with. The elders in his life tried pouring into him, but their words did not appear to carry that same weight as the validation he received from the streets. And now all those people he probably wanted to impress are not sitting inside that prison cell while he serves his sentence. And the thing that's really interesting about this particular case is how differently he carried himself once the consequences became real. Out of all the people involved in this heinous crime, Sean was the only one who openly broke down, shed tears, and displayed some level of emotional vulnerability during the sentencing process. Keep in mind, this case went extremely viral, not only because of the brutality and the sheer amount of planning that allegedly went into the murder, but also because Foolio was a popular rapper with a massive online presence, and years of highly publicized street conflict surrounding him. Sean Gathright specifically became one of the most discussed defendants because he reportedly had no personal connection to Foolio, and of course his background was nothing like what he was doing in that surveillance video where he was basically just dumping bullets into Foolio's car. Now we saw Sean crying in court and speaking about all the regrets he had, although he still appeared reluctant to fully describe or directly accept responsibility for every action attributed to him. And then during his final statement, he spoke about wanting to help other young people avoid getting pulled into the same lifestyle. He presented himself as someone who had finally recognized the destruction behind the image he had been chasing. And what's really interesting is that I bet his speech and all those things that he was saying probably didn't stop any other young person like him from getting into this life of crime. But a story like this, I'm sure, definitely has more of the desired effect that he said that he wanted in that courtroom. So let's talk a little bit about it, right? What actually happens inside that prison after the cameras disappear? What happens when these sentencing clips stop going viral, everyone goes home, and the person at the center of the case is transported into the prison system? I mean, you have to keep in mind who this young man is actually locked up with. A lot of these people are straight up demons, the worst of the worst society has produced. A lot of them have not experienced any real intimacy or physical contact with a woman in 10, 20, or even 30 years. I mean, you got Pookie and Ray Ray in cell block 927, and they haven't seen the inside of a pussy since 1999. And now here comes Sean Gathright, a sweet-looking 20-year-old who came from a relatively protected background, stood in court crying during the sentencing, and openly showed that the reality of prison had already broken through whatever tough image that he was projecting to the world. Now, I'm not saying crying makes him weak. I'm saying that inside prison, visible fear, emotional vulnerability, and inexperience can be noticed very quickly. Some of the people inside are legitimate apex predators. That is part of the reason some of them are locked up in the first place, and they can probably detect vulnerability very quickly. So in general, the kind of notoriety that he has, because he killed Foolio, could definitely work against him behind bars. Some of these people locked up with him might even be supporters of Foolio, or rather than just fans, perhaps gang members connected to the same side as Foolio. And that's kind of the sad part about his story. He destroyed his freedom because he was too easily influenced by other men. Now, when you look at some of the more recent photographs of Sean, he already appears dramatically different. I mean, that boy looks like he aged 10 years in a matter of months. You could tell that the expression is different. Whatever confidence or hope that may have existed is definitely gone. I mean, imagine being 20 years old, getting sentenced to life in prison. So he's obviously waking up, having to face that reality that he's never going to be free. Honestly, I can't even imagine carrying that reality every single day. But of course, he should have considered the consequences before participating in the murder. No matter what you think about Foolio, he doesn't get a second chance, right? His family doesn't get to undo what happened. And I think the craziest part about this particular story is just how many lives were ruined here. I said this in previous videos, but Sean Gathright's story matters because it demonstrates that you can have support, opportunities, a family that loves you, and people attempting to guide you and still throw everything away for nothing. A good upbringing cannot save someone who becomes determined to rebel against it. A supportive family cannot physically force you to make good decisions every hour of the day. People can advise you, they can warn you. You can even have a bunch of opportunities like Sean did. But if you're committed to proving that nobody can control you, eventually you're going to make one of those life-altering decisions that's not really going to be a good one. So I guess as for this particular stabbing rumor, obviously I can't verify that Sean Gathright was stabbed. It's been a little hard verifying this information, and parts of the story appear pretty inconsistent. But whether this specific rumor is true or false, the possibility of violence against somebody in Sean's position is not difficult to understand. And this doesn't even have to be direct retaliation for Foolio. Prison violence can grow out of conflicts that have nothing to do with the original case. It can involve gang politics, disrespect, debts, extortion, competition, reputation, or something as small as, I don't know, somebody like an inmate stealing your noodles or some shit. And this is what you sign up for when you commit murders. So I can imagine that navigating that kind of environment is just very tough. And I think that's kind of the bigger point, right? That even if this stabbing rumor is eventually debunked or confirmed, Sean Gathright is now living in a world where stories like this are believable for a reason. And the saddest part is that none of this had to happen. You had all these options, traveled to so many different places that most people will never see. But he wanted the streets, and now the streets he chased have been replaced by prison walls. I think overall it's really important to talk about these conversations, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of young people watching these videos, and I think it's important to highlight that other side. What really happens when the cameras stop rolling? It could be a stabbing, which is unconfirmed, or it could be your manhood gets absolutely violated. But that's beside the point. I'm curious what you guys think about this conversation. Obviously, this particular story is still unconfirmed, but at the same time, I still think it's important to talk about it because there's a reason why the Sean Gathright story even became so popular. Could have been a free man, bruh. But anyway, you guys let me know in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, I'm out.